Hello, hello. Happy Wednesday, everyone. Just to make sure you guys can hear me, drop me a quick note in the chat. Let me know where you're joining from right now, just so I know I'm not alone in here. So I see a few people already joined online. We have folks joining an Eventbrite, on LinkedIn, potentially on Facebook. Just a quick caveat. Some of the only platforms where I can actually interact with you in real time and see your comments are YouTube and LinkedIn. So I want to make sure you know that if I'm not responding to your comment, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's simply because I am not seeing your comments. That's all that's about. So let me remove that. So welcome everyone. Happy February 1st. Happy Black History and Black Futures Month. It's really fun to be having this conversation on making better decisions. And I think it's particularly timely right now. And I'll let you know, I'll share something personal as we go through this conversation today. So thank you guys. I see folks joining from South Carolina, Minnesota. Let's see, another from St. Paul. Joel, thank you for the heads up about the problem with Eventbrite, by the way. Kentucky, New Jersey, Fenton, Long Beach. All right, we're kind of well represented. San Antonio, Dallas, North Carolina, looks like Massachusetts, New York. All right. Andrea, I see you. Hey there. Welcome from Houston. Okay, so you guys feel free to continue to introduce yourselves in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I'm doing something unusual for me today, and that's keeping it really brief. I made this a 30-minute conversation. Specifically because there was a really specific and deliberate focus I wanted us to take. Now, of course, there have been some recent events that might encourage me to want to go over, but I'm going to stick to the 30 minutes for the content that I wanted us to cover. Now, for those of you who've never been in a space with me, whether it's virtual or in real life, before, let me take just a moment to introduce myself. My name is Bribiesca-Hedin. I'm the CEO of Bridgewell Professional Services, and we're a strategy execution and leadership development company here in Southern California. Now I spend most of my time, the vast majority of my time, on the leadership development side, so doing training and speaking and executive coaching. And I absolutely I love what I do. It's a lot of fun to see what happens when leaders at every level, right, start to recognize what's possible, what they can make happen where it might have felt before like there were no options or alternatives available for them. So that's always a fantastic place to be. Now, I do want to hear briefly from you. Go ahead and share in the chat. Give me just a few words to let me know, what are you hoping to get out of today's session? I know we're talking about making better decisions to get better results, but what brought you to today's session? What are you hoping to walk away with? And after the content, I'm glad to stay on and answer any questions that you have, but I'm interested and curious and want to make sure that we can touch on as much as what you came for as possible. So while you share that in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and just get us started. I think we're good. Any technical issues have been ironed out. So let's get going. Okay. Now, if you've ever been in a virtual space with me before, you've probably heard me say these words, right? The quality of your thinking matters. You guys heard me say that before? The quality of your thinking matters. And that seems so obvious and unnecessary to have a conversation addressing the quality of our thinking. And yet I want to walk you through my decision driver model, because I want you to understand why sometimes you make decisions. You'll notice, in retrospect, right? Because we're fantastic when we're looking back and thinking, what was I thinking? That you might make decisions that after the fact, you're wondering how you got there. Like, by every stretch of the imagination, when you're looking at it in retrospect, you're thinking, that didn't make sense. Like, I don't understand how I came to that conclusion. I don't understand how I thought that action, that reaction, that decision was going to actually move me closer to what it is that I want. And that's the challenge when our thinking is compromised. Well, there are a couple of big challenges around that. When our thinking is compromised, we don't know that it's compromised. So that's one. And one way you know that, again, as I just alluded to, is that you'll look back at something you decided or did last week and wonder how in the world you came to the conclusion that that was a good opportunity. That was a good decision, right? And I know I'm not alone in looking back and thinking, what was I thinking? And I know sometimes, we will spot it in other people really easily, where we see people making decisions that are clearly moving them farther away from what they say is important, like clearly not moving them in the direction of what they say are their priorities or their values or the intention or the goal, right? And again, it leaves us wondering what was happening there, what was going through their heads. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation, keep it short, keep it focused, and hopefully leave you guys feeling equipped, both understanding why you might make decisions and why others might make decisions that don't always make sense, and also understanding how to identify when the quality of your thinking is compromised. Because again, we often do not know. So I'm looking back at some of your comments here. Okay, so I see, Joel, you're here doing some recon. See me in action to see if I have a systemic angle on my work. Casey, make decisions in a fast-paced world. Got it. Shawnee, becoming more efficient at decision making. Let's see, there we go. I take too long to make decisions. Anybody else in that boat feeling like they take too long to make decisions? Let's see, Mia. Let's see, looking for a strategy or simple framework to apply to my decision-making process. Okay, well, you're going to get that here. So you're in the right place. Angela, brand new in a management position. And any knowledge is gold. I get that. I get that too. You're just kind of open and a sponge. So you're in the right place. This is my first training with you. Excited to be here. Well, Heather, I'm excited that you're here. Yamama, how I know I'm making the right decisions, better decisions. Okay. Let's see. Hope to get some guidance on how to effectively drive my career forward. Okay. Excellent. So the bottom line is, we want to make better decisions. And there's one reason that we want to make better decisions, and that's because we want to have better results, right? It's often not better decisions for decision's sake, but because when you think about our lives, our careers, the impact we have, it's really an amalgamation of all of the decisions that we've made, right? And the actions that we've chosen to take as a result of those decisions. So I want you to think about that for a moment. All of the results you have today are a reflection and direct result of all of the decisions you made in the past. That includes indecision, right? Sometimes we believe that if we don't make a decision, it's kind of buying us more time, or somehow we're getting ourselves off of the hot seat. But what I want you to understand is that not making a decision is in and of itself a decision. You guys clear? Not making a decision is in and of itself a decision. So I really want you guys to hold on to that. Now I'm going to bring up some slides because I want to be able to walk you through the decision driver journey. And let's go ahead and see if I can share this rather easily. And let's see. Oh, that's not working. Where is that? There we go. Okay, I think you guys can see my screen, so we are set. I'm going to leave it in this large format so that you can actually see the next couple of slides coming up. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, the quality of your thinking matters. And while no one will disagree with that, the challenge is that we don't often understand when the quality of our thinking is not where we want it to be. So I created this decision driver model to help my clients and to help me understand why people make decisions that don't move them closer to what they say is important, right? Decisions that actually often are counterproductive, move them farther away, push them further into a corner, whatever the case might be. And so I want to introduce that to you here now. Now, the decision driver journey is what I refer to it as. If you've been in my sessions in the past or a couple of years ago, you might know it as the career CEO journey, because I talk about it from the perspective of career decisions as well. But this really applies anywhere, any industry, any moment, any environment, and you'll understand why in a moment. And so really, we introduce the framework across 3 dimensions. One is the leader experience. You can see here on the left that's the experience you have as the leader, as the individual. Or if you're observing someone else, it's the experience they're having. The next one is your focus, meaning where most of your cognitive energy or effort is going, where that's pointed. And then the last one is your decision driver, what's actually prompting those decisions in that moment. So I'm going to start at the bottom. At the bottom, this is what I refer to as the concerned citizen. Now, we'll often end up in this space when we've been feeling like we're losing a lot. Like we're not seeing the kind of results that we're looking for often. We're potentially surrounded by negativity, potentially in what you might call a toxic or negative work environment, and might have started to internalize that. You can also end up here after extended periods of attempts at like people pleasing, right? And it not landing or it not working. And so again, this is what I refer to as the concerned citizen. Now, the concerned citizen is making decisions with a focus on themselves, right? A lot of their thinking is around how can I keep myself safe? Because their experience and where they are in that moment is filled with fear, there's anxiety, there's hiding, there's worry, probably catastrophizing a bit, right? And all they want is to avoid having any more pain or losing any more than they already have. So you can see here on the right, their decision driver is loss avoidance and self-preservation. Now, there's a chance if you've been working more than a few years that you've experienced being in this space. And one thing I want to share about this model is that you might find that in some communities or environments or moments, you're at the top of the model. And at other times, you're at the bottom. That'll make more sense as we go. But I want you to keep that in mind because it really is a journey, right? It's a journey. It is not a destination, just like health, right? Good health is a journey. It's not a destination. Because you achieved it once doesn't mean that you continue to stay there, but rather it's something you continue to work at and be aware of and fine tune and course correct as you go. Same thing happens here with the quality of your thinking and with the decision driver journey. So again, the concerned citizen, we don't want to be there. It's a tough place to be. And here's the thing I want to point out about making decisions out of fear. I want you to think back to the last time you made a decision out of fear. Now, when you made that decision out of fear, did it actually result in you feeling more safe after having made that decision? I didn't think about it for a second. Drop me a note in the chat. And whatever it is, whether it's a yes or a no, feel free to share because I absolutely want to see and recognize exceptions because they help us take the work deeper. So what decision have you made out of fear that actually had you feel more safe after making the decision? And I'm going to continue while you guys drop your notes or thoughts in the chat. But here's what I have found now, having this conversation with, hundreds of audiences and, tens of thousands of participants. And that is that something happens when we are making decisions out of fear, right? Of course, intuitively, you would think that, well, okay, I'm afraid, so I'm going to make a decision to protect myself. And so it's going to have me feel more safe. But unfortunately, what happens is actually counterintuitive. What happens is that our brains actually tune in more keenly, more finely, with more awareness into everything else that could possibly go wrong. So you go from being a little nervous to raise your hand to next time not even considering raising your hand, right? And next time you might not even consider turning your camera on if you're in a Zoom meeting. So, I exaggerate a little, but I want to make sure you guys understand the distinction. As soon as you start making decisions out of fear, what happens is you get more finely tuned into everything else that makes you nervous or that might possibly go wrong. And here we go. Exactly. Stacy, decisions out of fear never made me feel safe. And you're not alone. This is the experience that is reported, again, hundreds and now thousands of people that I've been in this conversation with. That is the experience. And yes, fear shuts down good thinking, right? Of course, it kicks in, fight or flight when it's an actual imminent physical fear. The problem is that we kind of go to that same place when it's kind of emotional fear, a fear that's just in your head. And here we go. Shawnee, not safer, just wished it wasn't emotion based. Yeah, it does not make us safer. It does not make us safer. And that's the unfortunate piece, because that's where we want to go. When we're feeling afraid, we don't want to make ourselves more vulnerable, right? We want to put up those shields. We want to make ourselves less vulnerable. So nothing has gone wrong. That's part of the human experience. And you guys, I see all of your comments. I see all of your sharing. Heather, I love how you guys out yourselves. I've hidden in the bathroom out of fear. Anybody else? Actually, literally try to remove yourself from the circumstance, not have to be with that discomfort and that fear. And yeah, decisions made out of emotion are not logical. And the challenge is that they feel logical in the moment. Yes, in the moment, they feel logical. I want you to think about this. I use this silly example, but has anybody ever heard of the notion of drinking and dialing? Have you guys heard of that? Meaning, you've had a drink or two, you're feeling kind of courageous and bold, and then you decide that that is the perfect moment to call your boss, your ex, your neighbor, and tell them exactly what you think about them, right? It sounds like fabulous in the moment, and you're thinking, how did I not do this before? I feel so bold and empowered, right? And then, of course, the next day, when the regret and the doom and the terror kicks in, when we realize what's happened. But I bring that funny notion up just to amplify the awareness that, well, we know that the quality of our thinking matters. We're often ill-equipped to recognize when the quality of our thinking has been compromised. You guys with me? We're not actually taught to recognize when the quality of our thinking is compromised. So we think high quality thinking is the same as low quality thinking. Like, I thought it, so it must be true. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. Now, I'm going to go on to the next. And by the way, I love your you guys sharing and your engagement. So definitely continue to share in the chat. Now, the next level up is what I refer to as the self-conscious careerist. And here the focus really is on your image and ego. So a lot of the decisions you make in this space are driven by, how do I make myself look good? How do I make myself look better? How do I make more people, like me? How can I control what they're thinking or doing about me? Right? So a lot of it is about assuming or imagining what's happening in someone else's head. So the experience is really reactive. We're constantly in our heads and rarely, if ever, present. And as you can imagine, the reason is that you're using all that cognitive brilliance You're wasting all that cognitive brilliance worrying about what somebody else might be thinking, might be doing, might be saying about you, how you look in somebody else's eyes. Because the ultimate decision driver here, as you can see on the right, that ultimate decision driver is around looking good and saving face, not being embarrassed, right? Being validated, having the last word. Right? Anybody have the experience of being with folks who just need to have the last word? It doesn't matter if they're wrong, they can't be wrong. Something else is wrong, but they can't be wrong. And it's an unfortunate experience because it's hard to engage other people when you're in this space. And here's the other unfortunate piece about this, that when we're not careful, this is where a lot of leaders end up as a default. This is where we go, that place where we are reactive, where we're reacting, where we've lost sight of the goal and what we said is actually important, that thing that's worthy of us, tripping ourselves up and looking stupid and then brushing ourselves off and doing it again. Right? But we get lost in this notion of I'll show them, right? Or things like, I need to look better, or things like being in a meeting, somebody asks a question, and instead of sitting with the question and wondering, how might this add value? Or that's an interesting question, your brain might immediately go to, I wonder what they meant by that. Are they trying to show me up? What did that raised eyebrow mean? Why didn't they invite me to lunch? I was here. You guys get me? Not a good place to be. Not a good place to be. Now, finally, where we want to be, of course, always at the top, right? We want to be at the top, but we want to be here in what I call the chief strategist or career CEO space. And the reason this space is so fantastic, it's not just because it's at the top, but it's because our decisions are actually being driven by something we say is important and worthy of getting wrong. Right? Our decisions are actually being driven by something bigger than ourselves or what other people think about us or whether we got the dang gold sticker or had the last word or anything else like that. So our focus is on a mission. And the mission doesn't have to be something incredibly lofty. Like, I worked at a cancer center for many years, like curing cancer. It can be something as immediate and direct and tactical as I want to make it to the end of this miserable project, right, as effortlessly as possible so I can add it to my LinkedIn and get out. Are you guys with me? So it can be that tactical. I want to learn as much as I can, even though I know this environment's not for me, so I can take what works, add it to my experience bank, add it to my leadership approach, right? Incorporate the what not to do and be an even better leader in my next role. You guys with me? And the experience here is one of clarity and confidence and being in the zone, but it's not, I want to make sure you understand, it's not because you're going to get everything right. It's not because you know what's next. We have this strange love affair with certainty. And one of the things I try to instill in the leaders I work with is the importance of being able to maintain your presence, your intention, your strategy, your brilliance, all of those bigger ideals and all of your best ways of being, even when things are not going according to plan. Because folks, it's a booby prize to only be magnificent when everything is perfect. That is not leadership. That is not effectiveness. You guys with me? Because what are you going to do the other 90% of the time when things aren't going according to plan? We need to be able to maintain our effectiveness, our power, our presence, our strategy, our ideals when things are not going according to plan, because that is where leadership shows up. That is where leadership counts. Right? When waters are calm, when nothing is happening, let's be honest, right? That vessel might not really need a captain. That captain really is worth their weight in gold when things aren't going according to plan, when they're not working, when the winds are strong, when the ocean's choppy. You guys with me? So again, the experience here is one of clarity and confidence, not because you know what's happening next. It has nothing to do with you knowing what's happening next. It has to do with you having made the commitment that even if things go off rails, even if the PowerPoint doesn't work, even if you say the wrong word or you trip as you're walking across the stage, all the things I've experienced, even if you do all those things, you know what you're there for. When you know what you're there for, you are less likely to be derailed by something going off the rails. Okay. So I'm going to stop right there. I want to ask you guys a question. Where do you spend most of your time? Do you spend most of your time making decisions from a place of strategy and keyed into and tuned into what's most important? Or do you spend more time than you'd like to admit at the bottom levels? Which, let me bring this up one more. Because here's another way to look at this model. See, when you're making decisions driven by ego and trying to get it right and trying to look good and being afraid and trying to hide and put up shields and not being vulnerable and, looking fantastic and all those things, we're making decisions out of a place of reactivity. And the reason that's so is because our experience in that moment is going to be defined by whether we think we're winning or somebody else thinks we're winning and is giving us permission to see ourselves that way. Right? So it's a reactive place to be. What I want to call you to is to spend most of your time and most of your decisions driven by what you actually say is most important, whatever that might be for you. Because what you don't want is to let your career, your team's experience, your organization's impact, your future, your legacy be dependent on what other people have you thinking about what you're doing. So I really want you to tune into that. Now, this last piece, I know we have like 2 minutes, so I'm going to go through this quickly. And then this is the question that shows up. How do you know if you are experiencing high versus low quality thinking? Anybody wondering that? How do you know whether you're experiencing high versus low quality thinking in the moment? Because our thinking can be really tricky. Because sometimes we'll feel like, again, ooh, I'm being bold and out there and going for it. But it's not driven by, I want you guys to see this difference. It's not driven by, this is an accomplishment worthy of me pursuing, right? Sometimes our attempts at playing big are driven by, I want to pursue this accomplishment to prove that I'm worthy of having accomplished it. Can you guys see the difference? I'm all for accomplishment's sake. And I think we all should be. We should always be trying to knock things out of the park. But I want you to distinguish when you've inadvertently wrapped yourself up in trying to get it right or trying to look good or trying to make it a way of proving yourself and collecting gold stickers. Because while it was cute to collect gold stickers, right? And the add a girl or add a boy when we were kids, that's not cute as an adult. And in particular, as a leader, when all you want to do is win in order to prove something to yourself. So I want to share this perspective with you because I just had this experience. I was in Mexico last week, and I was out there alone. I was with a group working on the strategic plan for my business, and it was fantastic. but I was apart from my family, right? So I was out there alone, but with this group. Now, in the midst of what was my being out there, a couple of pretty awful things happened, not to me, but out there in the world. And one was that there was there were some shootings at dance halls near where I grew up in Alhambra and Monterey Park. I grew up in Alhambra, and that already had me kind of emotional. And then later in the week, there was the incident in Memphis. And while I like to be able to separate myself, you know, in those moments of work, just like all of us do, right, from the being reactivated and those heightened emotional moments or experiences, here's what's interesting, that we'll still try to push through. So your teams may be experiencing whatever they're experiencing, but they're still going to try to push through. They're going to try to make it work. They're going to keep on trying to make decisions and to show up because they don't want to be fallible. They don't want to seem fallible. But here's what happened with me. I received an email from someone. They were inviting me to be in a focus group for leaders and folks who work with leaders. However, the way they sent me the email was by replying to one of my e-blasts. So when I got the message, it appeared as though it was coming from me. Now, typically, I would have taken a few minutes. I would have, figured out what was going on and realized they just replied to an email, changed the subject. So the email didn't appear it was coming from them. It appeared as though it was coming from me. Because I was already in a heightened state, you guys, I didn't go to the logical. I went to this place of fear and immediately went to, somebody is spoofing my email and spamming who knows how many people all over the place after I'm trying to preciously guard my email reputation. Now, I figured this out the next day, but in that moment, I was certain, right? I was certain of what was happening, and I had all my reasons to tell me what was happening. And I share that, specific experience because in that moment, not only was I alone, in a foreign country, there was this news that I felt like I was washing over me and that I was internalizing, and I was in a heightened emotional state. But I was trying to get through my work anyway. In my mind, I was trying to distract myself. Yes? That seems fair. I was trying to distract myself. What I didn't pause for is to allow for that heightened emotional state. Because here is the one thing that will always let you know the quality of your thinking, right? Like I said earlier, we're not trained to recognize the quality of our thinking. But here's one thing we often are tuned into, and that's how we feel. We can get really significant about how we feel, right? So tune into how you're feeling. If it feels positive or neutral, there's a good chance, you have your wits about you and the quality of your thinking is all right. But when it doesn't feel good, and I don't just mean that you're nervous, that's different, right? When it does not feel good, that is an indicator that the quality of your thinking is compromised, right? That experience for me, when I knew I was in a heightened emotional state, I knew it felt awful. That was my indicator that the quality of my thinking was compromised and that I needed to hit the pause button. So I know we're 5 minutes over, but I'm going to go ahead and pause there because I want to let you guys ask any questions that you have. And I just want to hear how this is landing and where you're seeing this in your life, in your career, on your teams, etc. Go ahead and think about this for a second. Where do you see this in your environment? Where do you see this in your environment? And Tracy, I'm looking back at your comments now as I'm waiting for your new comments. Waiting for permission to be fabulous. Need to stop that. Yes, yes, you do. And we all do, right? We all, and again, nothing has gone wrong. It's more of a reminder. It's more of a reminder than anything else. And Shani, yes, emotional equals low quality thinking. Oftentimes it does. And that's why I use that as a barometer. That's why it's so important to pay attention. Do not simply try to power through. Do not. It's the equivalent of drinking and dialing or drinking and acting, right? And behaving, as I saw somebody say earlier. And yes, pause when you're in a heightened emotional state. That's really what I want you to walk away from today with. It's been a rough week, right? Wherever you are, it's been a rough week. And here's the thing, even if the news of the day isn't impacting you directly, as a leader, it is impacting your teams. It is impacting your colleagues. It is impacting your clients. And you owe it to them and to yourself as a leader to allow for that pause. Frankly, I invite you to incorporate a specific opportunity to let your team members be where they are and have the conversations that they might not have an opportunity to have elsewhere about what they're experiencing now. This has been a rough week. This has been a really rough week. And again, if you don't experience it that way, that is fine. But as a leader, it's not about you, right? Your role as a leader is to elicit the best from yourself and others toward a common goal, period. And you can't do that. We can't do that when we're disconnected from what's happening with our teams, from what's happening with our colleagues, from what's happening with our clients, our vendors, our boards. We simply can't. So check in with your teams, take care of one another. Of course, I would love to keep this conversation going, and I invite you to schedule time to connect with me if you want to explore working together. I have group and individual programs. Always glad to talk about that. But even more important than that right now, I think I want that call to action to be to check in with one another. Bring your highest quality thinking to where others need it most. What you do today matters. People are suffering. People are struggling. You may be struggling. So allow for the pause, invite the conversation, but show up as that leader that you can be, even if you're not in a shared experience. So let me get back to your comments here. Yeah, this is why I meditate. Yes. So I can calm down. Yes. Joel, I'm not sending out a transcript, but the recording is available on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So please feel free to rewatch, share, etc. So thank you guys so much. That's not too bad. We only went over by about 10 minutes. Of course, we didn't get into questions, but more than anything, I want you to be intentional about what you're doing with the quality of your thinking, how you're spending time considering whether you're in high quality thinking, and what you need to do individually, personally, right, in order to be able to get yourself back into high quality thinking when you've slipped down that model. And again, I invite you, if you're not already working with a coach, you don't already have an opportunity to go deep and actually spend intentional, deliberate time that doesn't, flow away when you get busy, but intentional, deliberate time to becoming a more effective, more intentional leader, to having a career that's actually reflective of the impact you want to have, the legacy you want to make, the way you want to lead. Let's have the conversation. Okay, that I believe that my schedule is now extended, so you should be able to go in there and make an appointment out for the next month. Now, I am looking forward to connecting with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Every month, I try to do an event. It's the Bridgewell Leadership Series. So I look forward to seeing you next month. Okay, you guys, go out there and lead.